Welcome to the In Between podcast. Today I'm talking with Diana Lunzer, productivity and systems expert. Diana specializes in supporting established and ambitious founders that feel like the wheels are falling off as they grow their company. She helps these founders uncover where they are leaving money on the table when it comes to productivity and systems in their business. Diana, I am so excited to have you on the pod.
Thank you for having me. I'm super pumped to be here.
So I'm super excited because I feel like the past 2 weeks have been filled with my OC girls. I mentioned on the pod that I spoke at an OC networking event and I just connected with all these incredible like-minded women, and I've been kind of back to back with all of you guys, and it's been so fun to just reconnect as like a solo opportunity. So I am so excited. We've had this on the calendar for a while, and I feel like there's been things that have happened in my business and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to talk to Diana about that. Like, she is just going to up-level my productivity. And so first I want to go back. What made you passionate about productivity and systems, both for yourself and then for business owners?
I love that question. And I actually don't think like anything specifically made me, like, I honestly feel like I was just born this way. My background is actually in marketing. So I have over 14 years of experience in marketing in corporate for small businesses and big, giant, billion-dollar global brands. And even when I think back to like when I was in that corporate job and doing marketing, even like in high school, like I have always been just by nature very organized and into like task and project management and like tracking statuses, and like some people are like that. I feel like you're either born that way or you're not. It either comes naturally or not. But if it doesn't come naturally, it is for sure a learned skill, and it's definitely possible to learn. And so that's what I do today. I help teach other founders, specifically female founders, how to boost their productivity, how to achieve a higher level of focus, right? So that they can achieve their goals without complete burnout, right? So we can have a little bit more ease in our life. And so I think for me, like when I think back to like, how did I get into productivity? It was a windy road. Like it's never a linear straight path for sure, but I've just always naturally been a really organized person and I have fun with it. Like, I think some people might be like, oh, this is so confusing or hard for me. But once I realized like, hey, this is a gift, you lean into it, you do more with it, and you can serve and help people. That's when I feel like life started getting really fun.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love when you're able to recognize your gifts and lean into them instead of resist them. Because I think oftentimes we can resist those things and be like, oh, like, I don't know why I'm good at it, but I like this better. And it's like, when you finally lean into what you're good at, life gets so much more fun and business gets easier.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. So as far as entrepreneurs, let's move into the business owner space. I would love to hear like the most common challenges, complaints, your ideal clients coming to you. What are they struggling with?
Totally. So typically I have founders who come to me, they're usually in growth mode, right? So I do have some solopreneurs, but most of the people I work with are growing their business. So they're either starting to use contractors, maybe they've hired their first employee, they have a team of 5 to 10 people, somewhere in that range, right, of growth. And they're starting to scale. They have big dreams for their business. And that is when they're really realizing, okay, the systems that I have in place, or the lack thereof systems, they're not working as I'm growing. This is not working efficiently for me. These are not built for growth, and they're not sustainable as I grow my team out. So that's usually like where they're at in their business journey. And then the type of struggles, okay, time management is number one. So I know we're going to dive into that more, but like that is the number one thing that people seek help with, right? They want to manage their time better so that they can feel more balanced and calibrated between work and life and, personal things, right? Family. So time management's a huge one. And then systems in their business, getting organized on the back end. So things like organizing their notes, their note taking, their ideas, right? A lot of times people are super scattered and they have like some ideas in Apple Notes and they have some ideas in like some random Google Doc. And then they have like some ideas on a sticky and then they use a journal. It's like, where was that idea I had? Or where was that to do I need to do after that call I had yesterday? Like, so creating some sort of structure in terms of the systems that they use to operate and run their business for everything from taking notes and to keeping track of your tasks and your to-do, and then expanding as you're growing, keeping track of your team's tasks and to-dos and helping them prioritize. I think those are some of like the most I see those things the most often when people come to me.
Yeah. And those are, I mean, task management and time management kind of bleed into one another, right? Because it's like if you're spending so much time on tasks that either someone else could be doing or a program could be doing for you, i.e. like searching through all the notes and trying to figure out where your best idea was, that bleeds into your time. It's taking up more time when you could be doing something that's more productive or more useful.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've probably all heard it, but that phrase of like, what got you here won't get you there. And so thinking of the people that I serve, they're generally in that growth mode. They are growing and up leveling into their next stage of business, whether that's, multi six figures or they're powering through that 7-figure line, going towards 8. You're not going to get where you want to go with the systems and the habits and the practices that you've had in place. Sure, some have been serving you and they will carry through, but a shift is needed for sure to get to that next level. And so that's definitely what I help founders with. And it's so much fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
What are those habits? I'm sure you're going to say time management, task management, all the things you just said, but also kind of on a more personal level. Like, do you guys have conversations about personal life, how they're spending their time creatively? What are those habits for those high productive entrepreneurs that you're working with?
Yeah. So I like to think, and when I coach people on this, we talk about thinking about habits and our priorities seasonality in a seasonality way. So taking an approach of it's kind of overwhelming when you're like 12 months, whole year. Like we do a lot of annual planning and like, even that's like, whoa, that's a lot of time. Like I'm so different now maybe than I was a year ago. So like, how could I possibly plan out a year ahead and think through habits and things like that? And so I like to encourage founders and business owners to think about just the season ahead. Like if we're just thinking of the next quarter in front of us, the next 3 months, first identifying what are your priorities in your life right now, right? And thinking about life as a stool, right? You've got 3 legs on a stool, could have more legs than that, right? But in general, right? You got 3 legs on a stool. And if those legs are not even, that stool's going to be a little rickety and it's not going to be so comfortable to sit in. And so I like to encourage founders to first identify their priority pillars. Like what is most important to you in this upcoming season of life, just the next quarter ahead, and like holistically, you as a human being, your family, your personal life, if there's hobbies you want to tap into more, your business and that growth that is going to occur there, relationships with friends, like identify those pillars of like what is most important to me in this season. And then we go in from there. Like that's number one, whether you're annual planning for your business or you're trying to identify what habits you might want to implement to up level, you got to start and have that clarity on your priorities, right? And that's going to shift. That's why we only do it seasonally, right? You got to check in quarterly. So that's where we start. And then it really depends on the person, right? Everybody's so unique. Like I'll give an example for me recently. I started early wake ups. So I was previously waking up early just because I have young kids and they were waking me up. So it was not by choice. But now that they're sleeping and I'm in a different season and knock on wood, they're generally sleeping through the night. I'm in a different season. So now it's like the thought of waking up early on my own accord is like reasonable because I'm getting pretty generally good sleep. And so for me, I started waking up maybe like a month ago now at 4 a.m. And I have now a routine. I know it's intense, right? And like that was never for me before, right? It's just for this season, it's for me and it's really working well right now. Who knows if it's going to last the whole year, but it's not this like long commitment thing with these habits, right? It's just like, hey, for right now, this is what's working well for me. It feels really good. It's serving me really well. And so I'm going to keep doing it. So that's what I would encourage people to do is just gain some clarity, journal a bit. What are your priorities for the next quarter ahead? Holistically as a human being, not just in one area. So we have a nice even stool to sit on. And then you can start identifying like, okay, maybe what are some habits I might need to release? What are some habits that I might need to continue? Like that start, stop, continue wheel. Yep. And that's a really good place for people to start if they're trying to identify and like they want to feel more calibrated in their life.
I love that because you're right. We do tend to, I always think about the business book Traction. I'm not sure if you've read it, but in that, right, they do the year plan, which is so important. I understand it's so necessary, but it can definitely feel like, oh my gosh. And then when he breaks it down, it's like, okay, well, what are you going to do for the quarter? What are you going to do for the month? What are your 3 things you're going to do in the next 2 weeks? Whatever. Then it feels better. But that first year is a shocker because it's like, okay, well, I also don't have the predictions of how this is going to play out or what I'm going to do. And it's taking that accountability of what you can do. And then I love what you said about just working through that season based off the priorities, because like you said, like sometimes family has to come first. If you've got kids and it's flu season, like all of those things can shift and change, and it doesn't always have to be business is business life. Like we have to be able to balance as hard as it is.
Yeah, I always love to say like it's a calibration, right? Like we're never going to achieve like constant balance between all the things that we want to pour into and that are important to us in our life. And so think of it more as like the old school scales in the doctor's offices, where they would like toggle it until they got it right where it needed to be. Like it's flexible, right? We're always toggling that scale day by day, week by week. But as long as like you pull back and when you're looking at like your month, you're like, yeah, generally that feels really good. I felt calibrated between what's important to me. Maybe one week I worked my tushy off in work because it was super busy, but then the next week I got to pour into my kids more. And so like it all evens out in more of a calibrated way. So I try to encourage people to think about it that way, because it is hard to grow a business. This isn't for the faint of heart, and you will need to compromise. Like if you're expecting to be able to grow a business, especially to multi 6 figures, 7 figures and beyond, like there are compromises that are going to be made. And so I think thinking about it in a calibrated scale way gives you takes some of the pressure off, right? Because you're like, yeah, okay, not every day needs to be perfect and balanced and all that. It's like, no, just pull back. In the month view, how are we feeling? In the week view, how are we feeling, right?
Well, and I feel like, especially working with female founders, I'm not a mom, but I'm sure that you work with a lot of female founders who are also moms. And I would assume that the things that you hear them saying are the guilt and like, okay, yeah, like you said, it is very difficult to build a business. It's very difficult to prioritize that time. I can't imagine feeling like that time is being taken away from your kids.
Yeah. And I think that's where when I start with founders a lot, is we start with a calendar. Your calendar is like the most important thing. And so if founders are not using a digital calendar to manage their time, like that's number one. If you want to write your stuff down for that day on a piece of paper or in a planner, by all means, but your time management needs to happen first and foremost in a digital calendar. I stand behind that 100% because of the flexibility it gives you. You just don't get that with a paper planner. Mm-hmm. So all my paper planning girlies, don't come after me. And so we start there, because everything that you say yes to in terms of obligations, commitments, time on your calendar, whether it's personal or business or for family, whatever, a yes to something is a no to something else. And so if we don't have visibility into where our time is going and the different buckets it's falling into, then you have no idea where you're at. And it's really hard to fix it if you're feeling off track or you're not feeling calibrated. So that's where I start a lot with founders when we're talking about time management, is like, let's make sure we're using a digital calendar, and let's make sure we're using it in an effective way. So there's not just like one calendar that everything goes on. Let's do some sub calendars. Let's color code it, and let's make sure those buckets feel right for you. And then that way we have like color cues when we look at the week. Like something I do, I have a me time calendar on my Google Cal, and it's pink. And if I don't have any pink on my week, then I go like, okay, either I just need to acknowledge it's not going to happen this week and just know that, so I'm not going in with false expectations and then feeling disappointed at the end of the week, or I need to get some me time on the calendar, whatever that looks like. So I think color coding a calendar is like a super visual, it gives you a visual cue, and it's a really quick way to pulse check. Or am I going to be calibrated? Am I setting myself up to feel calibrated this week with the things that are important to me in this season of life?
I love that. You're like the third person on the podcast to talk about this color coding calendar.
I will say I have a freebie for people. If you hate the like standard colors on any, Google Cal or whatever, they're very like bold and like bright and kind of like loud. If you want a calm calendar, I do have a freebie. It's a calm calendar color palette, and you can pull those hex codes, those color codes, and put them in your Google Cal. You can get it in the link in my bio. It's totally free.
Okay, wow. I'll be the first to download it then, because I think I've went in and I've like color coded recurring events like the gym or, whatever. I think I have a different color for the podcast versus my business. But I think where I personally am lacking is the personal side of things, of like spending time with my nephews, me time, like all those different things, because where I see it for me personally is like the gym is so fun, but like me time is actual fun, like reading a book, you know? And
Yeah.
so I think classifying those things and then, like you're saying, seeing them as a whole picture for your week. Another thing that I had talked to someone yesterday who was big into productivity too, is she said something that she's found as someone who feels almost constricted sometimes by her calendar is she moves things in real time. So if a task took her a little longer, instead of leaving it that way, she moves and adjusts the time of the day. So when she goes to look at the next week, she can reflect on this week and be like, honestly, that task is taking me way longer. I need to extend the time or whatever it is. And I loved that she said that, because I'm like, yeah, it does feel constricting sometimes to someone who's not used to and loves the calendar life.
100%. That is one of the huge, like the biggest reasons why I say go digital calendar, because this is a living, breathing calendar. This is not like I put something on it and I never touch it, even if it changes, right? I do that
Yes.
too. Like I update and adjust my day as it goes real time so that I can go back and do a calendar audit if needed. And I have actuals to reference of being like, yeah, that took me that long, or that didn't take me as long as I thought. Plus, it also helps too if you have certain clients that maybe you're invoicing in an hourly rate. I know a lot of people, probably use specific time tracking tools for that, but this is also a solution for that. If you're like, I don't really want to use a time tracking tool, you just have a general guide of reference because you color code that client, and it's like, boom, I can look back and easily scan through what I worked on for that client in the last month or week. So yeah, I totally agree. Your calendar is like the most important thing.
Yeah. No, I love it. I'm definitely going to take it more seriously now that I have had all these conversations. So before we pop over to the productivity tips that I want you to give everyone, I want to spend some time on like the common time wasting activities that you see that are just draining people. We've touched on the calendar, we've touched on the tracking, but what are some other things that either we can easily eliminate from this conversation or even just adjust that will save us time?
Yes. Okay. I would say shifting into being a proactive CEO of your business owner, because I think a lot of times people sit down and they start their day and they're like, all right, let me figure out what I'm working on today. Let's prioritize now. It's the morning of the day. I'm a huge fan, and I've seen this time and time again with myself and with clients. It is so much easier and like filled with less friction. It's smoother if we proactively plan out our week the week before. So whether I do it on Fridays, Sundays people like, right? Whatever day works for you. But like at some point towards the end of the week, have a recurring cal invite for about 20, 30 minutes, plan for week ahead. That reminds you it's already blocked. You're not going to have to like remember, right? So we have that reoccurring thing, that automation that's set up. And then you just look at your week ahead and you look at it at a glance. You shift things that maybe need to be adjusted. Maybe you realize you accidentally got double booked. Like that is the way to feel more proactive, so that when you sit down on Monday morning, you go. You don't just like, okay, what are we doing today? What's important to me? You already did that. And now you're sitting down, you're ready, and you're diving in. And that allows for sharpened focus, because we're just sitting down. Yeah, maybe you check your calendar, you scan your email, you like get into the day, but you're not kind of wasting time every morning starting from scratch, figuring out what is the priority, what's going to move the needle, what do I need to spend my time on today. You've already done that, and you've looked at the whole week, right? So we've looked at it from the lens of calibration, as well as like, what's a priority in my business? What do I need to focus on next week? So I think that's a huge kind of like low-hanging fruit, totally free tip that people can start implementing right away. And then secondarily, I would say automating as much as we can, right? Like I always talk about it like this, like our brain uses calories to think and to work, right? If we can reduce the mental calories that are being burned, or the mental calorie load that we are carrying around, remembering to do things that are tasks or reminders that should be automated, that's also a really great place for people to start if they don't have automations or reminders set up at certain frequencies. So a really easy way to get started with this is just take some time, 15, 20 minutes, sit down and write out what are things that I do daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually, and just jot them down. And this, again, holistic, whole person. This is not just business stuff, like full picture, right? I mean, and go as granular as you want. Like, to give you an example, I might be on the more intense end of the spectrum on this one, but like we'll do replace air filter upstairs quarterly, right? Like just, you got to do these things. Why are we relying on ourselves to remember and then feeling like crap when we forgot? Well, we have a million other things to do. So just take a little time, be proactive, think through, hey, what are the things? And then go set those reoccurring reminders, wherever that is, whatever tool that makes sense for you. If that's reminders in your iPhone, or you use Notion that's what I use, or just your Google Calendar, whatever it is, you set those up, and then you don't have to remember. Right? You don't have to have that additional weight on you. So that's another tip.
Yeah, I love that. Especially, like you said, in the house with your kids, with all the things going on. And then, yeah, like in your business, there are even just tax things, right? Like you don't think about it. And then all of a sudden your CPA is texting you and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to do this. So it's like, if you take 2 seconds to schedule those in quarterly, whatever it is, it takes the load off.
Yeah. And then beyond just like jotting them on a list or having them on a reminders list, I'm a huge fan of time blocking. We talked about the calendar a bit. So I love having that on my calendar as a time block, so that like the time is reserved for me to get that done or to think through that or whatever it is, right? So that when it just avoids like clients booking calls over that, and then it's not a priority anymore or whatever. So I think if you can implement some sort of time blocking strategy, that's like another fabulous place to start. And that ties into these reoccurring things, right? Don't just put it on some random list somewhere, like actually get it on your calendar, because that's where your time is managed.
Mm-hmm. So let's go into kind of a little bit of time blocking, and then a little bit of, I want you to obviously talk about Notion and how that works and what you use that for. So you mentioned obviously having that preparation to your week. I do something similar, but I use Asana. So for me, because I'm in social, a lot of the tasks are reoccurring every single month, right? We have to start the content calendar, get it approved, all of those things. So Asana really does that for me. There's, some things that I have to change based off of, okay, this is a heavy appointment week. I'm not going to get all these tasks done. But I do have to say, it's so helpful. Like, it's so just great to know what you're going into for the day, especially if you're in the phase, like I am trying to move out of the solopreneur phase. So I have a contractor, but we still do a lot of the in-business stuff together, right? So I'm not necessarily on the out-of-business tasks yet. So it's helpful to know, like, okay, these are the things that are due for the client, but then I can sit here and spend CEO time, if you will. Mm-hmm. What are the apps, resources, technology that you use for your clients to make this more efficient?
Yes. So I love that you use Asana. I tell people, use whatever works for you. Right? I personally use Notion. Big fan. Built a whole business around it. Got certified as a consultant. Love Notion. I think it's fabulous. So I'm team Notion. But I always tell people,
Notion, can you explain a little bit what Notion is? Because honestly, I've heard it, but I've never dived into what it is. So I would love for you to explain that too.
Let's go there. Okay. So this is how I explain Notion to people. It's a tool to build tools within, custom tools. So you have the option as a business owner to either go over to the shelf and pull a software to add to your tech stack, whether that's Asana or ClickUp or whatever. And those are considered off-the-shelf software, right? So you are using those softwares just as those software designers created it to function and designed it how they want it to look. Whether or not that works for you or that appeals to your taste, you just kind of have to tap into the way they built that software, right? Mm-hmm. They may have way more features, right? A lot of people run into that with like Salesforce, like, oh my gosh, I'm paying so much for this and it has so many features I'm not using, right? So it's like this mismatch. And so that's where Notion comes in, because what I do and what people are able to do in Notion is essentially build custom software to resolve your biggest pain points in your business when it comes to things like task and project management, client portals, knowledge base, so taking notes, having ideas, wikis, kind of like internal company intranet, keeping information together. So SOPs, standard operating procedures, employee onboarding, just streamlining so many workflows within an organization or within a business. And so Notion allows us to build custom tools that are designed to function exactly the way you need them to function. And Notion is so beautiful on its own. It's just like a very aesthetic tool. Design is a priority. It's a value of the business that when you're in there, for people who value and are like actually care and are like, yeah, this tool is really beautiful, I enjoy working in it. Notion is like that. But then you also have these customization options you don't have in other tools to further apply either your own branding or whatever design style you like. And so we're able to create these stunning digital workspaces that have been designed with as much thought as our physical spaces, right? We think of an interior designer would design your house or your office. That's kind of what I am to your digital workspace. Is I come in and I build you custom software to help you run your business within Notion, and it functions how you need it to function, and it's designed beautifully so you actually enjoy being in there.
Wow, that is so cool. I didn't know that you could do all of that. And that's where, for me, that would be a nightmare because I'm like, how do I even do this? And I would need you. So tell me some of the ways for specific types of business. Like we can go for a service-based business in social media. We'll use my business as a guinea pig. How would you set that up to be user-friendly?
Totally. So every operating system, that's what we call them. Every operating system I build in Notion for businesses starts with a company home. So this is your company homepage. This is like, as you do hire contractors or full-time employees, this is where people come in by default. And so this is your main area. And this is where you can navigate to all the other areas of your operating system, as well as have pre-filtered views of the most relevant and pertinent information, and think like high level stuff. So it'll have a view of like recent meeting notes, right? It'll just show like the top 10 most recent things like that you might need to access quickly on this kind of home dashboard for the company. And then from there, we always create a CEO dashboard. So this looks pretty much the same in terms of structure and layout as the business operating system home, but it's designed and it's customized for the CEO. So it's got specific details that they need to see, like brand health KPIs, maybe financials, specific filtered views to only things that are relevant for them. And then the next level is we typically will do that same thing and create employee dashboards for contractors or employees. And so everybody has like essentially their own home page that they go into in the operating system that has the information they need to see that's relevant for their job, their workflows. So they're not filtering through and manually toggling and trying to find the info. It's like it's already customized for them. So that's like the baseline of where we start. And then from there, depending on the pain points that business owner is experiencing and the business model they have, we'll create a variety of areas from like kind of notes and ideas, generally always a task and project management area, all the way to I'm working with a client right now, and like you, she has a podcast. And so we created a whole podcast area, and we're setting up, we were chatting about it a little bit on email, the coolest workflow automations, right? And views. So she can easily collect intake information for guests coming on her podcast. And then there's automations happening in the background where it's like, hey, if they don't submit their form 7 days before we go to record our podcast episode, it automatically sends them an email reminder with the link to the form. And then she has a pre-filtered view that she can see if they still haven't filled out the form, so she can manually do that outreach. And there's so many, like the cool thing is we do the build in Notion, right? So we build it, it's beautiful, it functions the way it needs to function. And then the next layer is the automations. So then we start automating things that need to happen in the background. We try to take manual tasks off you, your team, take it off their plate so that they're not wasting their time doing things that for sure can be automated. And the automation is where it gets like really fun in Notion. So
no, that sounds like an actual dream. Can you, and this is just me in my social media brain right now, is there a way to build something like a content calendar where potentially a client could come in and approve through that whole setup?
Yes. So I actually have a template. It's called Marketing Hub that people can grab if they're interested in something like this. It's designed for the business owner who markets their business, but it's also designed for like social media managers that have clients and things like that. And so essentially, yes, is the short answer to that. And so, you would build a content calendar, then you'd have templates for different types of posts. That's how I manage both my businesses off of Notion. So I have that and I use it daily. And so I have like add short form video, add carousel. And these are all, these buttons, when I click them, all pull templates that I've designed in the background that make it really easy to track statuses of each post, edits. If you do have clients or people reviewing, you build that into the workflow. So let's say your client could have a pre-filtered view that she doesn't need to touch, right? Like it's just always this view for her that says like, balls in your court for review. And then you, Cassidy, as the business owner, would have a pre-filtered view on your page that says client approved, ready to publish. So you are not opening up like you would like an Excel sheet or something. And every time adjusting the filters to see it the way you need it, we design these pre-filtered views based on the information you need to get your job done efficiently. And then when you just open Notion, it's all right there. So it becomes really powerful when we're talking about like workflows with more than one person, whether that's a client or that's a contractor or a team member.
Wow. It could do everything, essentially. What is the price range for Notion? And then I would love for you to talk about the build out side and what it looks like to hire someone to build out all of that for you, just as transparency for the audience.
Yeah. So Notion's pricing model is a member base, like however many seats or people you have on your account. So I will say they have a free plan. So if anybody just wants to try it out, like go check out Notion. I have a link to download it in my link in bio and Instagram. It's an affiliate link, so go use it. But they have a free plan. I ran 2 businesses on the free plan for like 2 years. I only bumped up because I wanted some more automation, flexibility, and I became a certified consultant. So the free plan is so robust. Like you are not limited that much with features. So definitely go check it out. And you can, I have some free templates too. You can download if you want to check it out and not totally start from scratch. But then there are some limitations on the free plan. So if you're like, okay, I do have a team, one of the biggest limitations are members. So if you're like, I have somebody else who really touches a lot of areas of my business and I don't want to have to invite them as a guest, which you can do on the free page. So you still can collaborate on the free tier. But if you're like, yeah, I don't want to like have to invite them to a certain area. I just want them to have access to everything. It's just easier. Then you would have them as a paid member on your plan. And that would bump you up into Notion's first paid tier. And so the pricing model is per seat or per person per month. So it's $10 if you commit to annual billing per person per month. So if you had you and one other person, it would be $20 for you to use Notion every month if you committed to annual billing. I think if you do monthly, at least at the time of this recording, if you just do it monthly, it's $12 per person per month. So you get a little discount if you do the year.
So very affordable.
Super affordable. And there are other tiers when we get higher and higher with larger teams that make it obviously more cost effective. So it's definitely like price is not a barrier to use Notion whatsoever. I think especially when you compare it to the other tools out there, it replaces a lot of other tech. So the other goal is like, let's simplify your tech stack so that we're not using all these tools and paying for all these subscriptions. So that's another huge benefit about it. So yeah. And then I can dive into like a custom build if you want to go there next.
Yeah, totally. I think it's so important that we talk about these price transparencies because when you first start your business, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, it's like, okay, how can I do everything for free? And then you start to get a little, spicy. You're like, let me pay for something to help me out. And I mean, just as you were speaking, I'm like, okay, well, I do 99% besides Asana through Google Drive, right? Because I have a lot of photo, a lot of video, but like how much am I spending just for extra space? Because I need my Google Slides and all of this other stuff. So it really does add up when you think about all the different tech that you're using and spending versus having one platform. But my caveat to that is I am not someone who loves to build out anything. It was literally just figuring out Asana was like the stress of my life. And my business coach was like, I don't care what it is. You need to figure it out. You need to put it on your calendar. So tell me, I already know the benefit of hiring you, but I would love for you to go into one, the benefit, and then 2, pricing of hiring someone to just set this up for you ready to run.
Yeah, I hear you. And so like, because I am a business owner, I have a marketing business too. I have this second business, Flow State, where I help other founders with productivity and Notion and systems and tech. And so I get it. Like you want to focus on getting clients and serving your clients as a business owner. And so that's why I really built this business, was out of this need. And so what I do if you were to hire me is we do a VIP month, essentially. I build you a custom operating system in Notion so that you don't have to build it. I migrate your existing information in so that it's ready for you to use on day one. And then I'm there. We have a training and support period after the build. So I'm there to train and support you and your team while you're kind of either shifting from another tool or just starting to use Notion for the first time. And so I found that mix of those 3 phases together seems to work really well for founders, because you're right, it is kind of a lot. Anytime you start to use a new tool, there's going to be an onboarding curve because there's the menu buttons in a different spot or, whatever it is. And so it's really nice that founders have an expert. I am a certified Notion consultant with Notion. I use this tool so much and absolutely obsessed with it. And so to be able to tap into someone like me when they have questions, like immediately and get quick answers. We send Loom videos. I was voice noting with a client the other day. Like, I will meet you where you're at so that you feel supported. And then you guys can just go from there when our time is done. So that's like the best way and the most hands-on kind of done for you service that I offer. And that VIP month is 5K, and that's what, and you get all of that, right? I have a couple different tiers in there. It starts at 5K. So it just depends on like how robust your operating system is that we're building. Yeah. But typically a lot of founders fall in the 5K bracket. I also have been trying to noodle around how can I make my services and reach more affordable and reach more founders that maybe aren't quite at that stage to make that investment. And so I have a Notion operating system template. And so this is my unique way in terms of how I design operating systems. Mm-hmm. There's tons of templates out there. I feel mine is superior. It is so intuitive and it is so beautiful and it is so functional. Like, we're truly designing software in Notion for you, and it needs to like be best in class. And so I've taken what I built for clients, and I am now going to be offering that soon in probably like a week or two. So it'll probably be out by the time this airs, my specific operating template that people could download and DIY themselves, or they can schedule calls with me and we can do a couple support calls I can help guide them and help them get their information in there. But it's definitely more DIY, a little bit less hands-on, but it will be so much more affordable than the VIP month.
Yeah, and probably more user-friendly than trying to create all of that yourself in the beginning.
Exactly, because that's the mistake I see a lot of people make is they'll download like 1 or 2 or 3 templates from Notion, but then they're like, I don't know, it's like not all talking, it's not all working together, it's not like it's not feeling like cohesive. Yeah. And so that's where it's like, well, yeah, you got to like start from the beginning with all the areas and connecting them where it makes sense and setting up automations. And so a lot of business owners are like, I don't want to learn Notion at that level, which is totally fine, or I just don't have time for this. Like, and so that's where the VIP month comes in.
Well, it's like, and we'll do it for you. When you were speaking, I was like, the fact that you do the integration is massive, because even just integrating from my to-do list to Asana was like, painful. I don't have time for this. So I can't imagine on a grander scale having to integrate and then having all these other platforms that you're probably still not super familiar with to move into Notion.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's been really fun. I mean, this is like my most favorite way, because I love to pair the actual building in Notion for people with the teaching, right? I'm a projector, human design projector, like I'm a guide. I love guiding people and helping them and teaching them. And so getting to do both of those together in that VIP month is awesome. And then I've actually just launched a membership too called the Productive CEO Club. And so this is for founders who maybe they either already have an operating system or you don't even have to use Notion to join, but you're just looking to achieve a higher level of focus as a founder. You want to boost your productivity. You want to get organized. We talk about more than just Notion. So we go into like AI, how we should be using AI in our business, tools, tech, systems, habits, time management strategies, goal setting, accountability. It's all in there. And there's going to be so many like swipe files and templates that you can lift to fast track getting organized and boosting productivity. Plus, you're going to be in community with other female founders who are like at the same stage as you and are facing those same struggles. So I would also encourage people to check that out if you're interested in more ongoing support, because it's so much fun inside there.
And that's a monthly membership, right?
It's a monthly membership. Yeah, it's called the Productive CEO Club.
I love it. I saw it on your Instagram. That's such a good idea, by the way.
Thank you.
I love it. So let's talk actually a little bit about the productivity. Let's go back to finish and wrap it up. Yeah. What are some basic productivity tips? We've kind of talked about the time wasters. What are some basic things? I also let's talk personally too. I feel like we waste so much time personally that we can incorporate into our lives and start boosting productivity.
I love it. So I will say this one might seem like super basic or overlooked, but it has helped me a ton, especially when it comes to being productive and focusing when it's time for me to focus. And that is just taking a few minutes and getting really clear on your why. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you, and maybe you can do that while you're, mapping out your priorities for the season ahead. It's a nice exercise to do together. But what is the reason for all of this? Why are you pursuing this? Why are you building this business? Like, what is that deep rooted? Why is it important to you? And I've just found that is so helpful to have clarity on, number one, but then remind myself about that when either times feel hard schedule feels really busy, you feel too stretched too thin, things like that. When you can recalibrate and kind of come back to that deep rooted why, which is one of the things we do inside the Productive CEO Club, we do quarterly goal setting and alignment and accountability. And so we come back to that, and you're guided through prompts like that every quarter. So you can revisit that, because when things start feeling kind of like scattered and a little overwhelming, it's really hard to like get back into focus, right? And so if you can remind yourself like, hey, this is why I'm doing this, right? And maybe it comes down to like a discipline thing, right? I am maybe focusing right now so that I can have the payoff I'm looking for in the future, and just reminding yourself about that, whatever that looks like for you in the season. So I would say coming back to your why are we doing all of this is helpful, because it just gives you that clarity in times when it's feeling really tough or sticky. And then, yeah, I mean, in terms of productivity, like kind of like tips and strategies, we talked through a few of them. I think digital calendar for sure is a great place to start. And then making sure those calendar categories are color coded and there are categories. So you're not just like using one calendar, you have some categories on there that make sense. I also have categories in my freebie with the Calm color palette. So if you're like, I don't even know, like what buckets would I even start with? I share the ones I use to give you a little bit of inspiration. But I think that's a really great place. And then the other place that like, we talked about task and project management. I think like nitty gritty, like when we're like thinking about like focus and productivity, something that's helped me, especially when I'm really feeling like at capacity, which spoiler, I am right now. I have the last few weeks just felt like, okay, I don't think I can commit to like one more thing right now. When the days are really stacked like that, I actually will, when I sit down in the morning, anytime I have a call or something that like I have to like this, a podcast interview, something that's like somebody else is involved in, I'll just set an alarm for like 5 minutes before that. And I just have the alarm like call soon, just because it is so easy to get into your flow state, right? When you're working on something and you are vibing and it's feeling good. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, I didn't see the alert, or I was in focus mode. I put focus mode a lot on my computer as well, so I don't get notifications when it's time to focus. But I think setting some sort of alarm, or there's the Pomodoro technique where you have some sort of timer visual, try out different things and see what works for you. But I think it's starting like getting really clear on like what's not working right now. And then we can start game planning solutions to it. But what's not working is probably the best place to start.
I love that. And I love that tip, because I think also going into the time thing is the environment that you're in. I assume you work from home too. For me, if I'm home too much, I'm like suddenly not productive at all. And then I go to a coffee shop, I'm done in 2 hours. Like, taking note of your productivity, how productive you're being in the current space that you're in too.
Yes, environment's huge. And we talk about this a lot too, is this idea of your rhythm, right? Especially we're thinking of like seasonality and things like that, but also think of your rhythm within the season and within the days. So we didn't really go into theme days yet, but that's also another productivity strategy, is giving yourself a little bit of structure. Again, this is a digital calendar we're working with, so it's totally flexible for people who are freaking out when I say theme days, but it just gives you a little bit of structure to be like, okay, generally on Mondays, in whatever day. For me, generally on Mondays, I try to do CEO days, right? Client work creeps in for sure, but I try to at least reserve my Mondays for no meetings, and it's CEO, like work on my business, not in it, right? And then like maybe I do calls on midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I try not to do calls on Mondays and Fridays. And then you think of your rhythm for the day, like what feels good to you. Like for me, I don't love a call at like 9 a.m. or 8:30. It's just, right? Like I kind of want to get in my day. I want to make some progress on my checklist. Although now it's a little bit different since I've been waking up at 4 a.m. Like 9 a.m. I'm like, let's go.
Yeah, the day's half over.
Right. So it just depends, right? Like on what time are you waking up, and like, how do you want your mornings to look, and reflecting on that. I always talk to people and say like, let's just design our dream schedule today. We don't need to wait for some far off time or milestone or revenue number to be living our dream schedule now. So think through that, reflect on that. Like, what does your dream day look like? And try to integrate that into your daily schedule now. Is it sitting outside enjoying your coffee or your matcha? Is it getting a morning walk in? I was trying to do that for a while. I was doing like a weighted vest and going for a morning walk every morning, and I loved it. Yeah. But now in this season, I'm doing Peloton rides. So it's like, it's going to change. It's going to be, you got to be flexible, but giving yourself some time and space to reflect and just like actually think about it and be like, hey, what is the rhythm? Like, how do I like my mornings, my afternoons? When do I feel most energized? Am I a night owl or a morning person? Like, what type of work do I like to do at, the different stages of the day? I think that's huge, because then you avoid sometimes that friction we experience when we sit down to do a task and then we're like, shit, I don't want to do this. I don't feel like it. And then you're like, oh, I feel this way every time I sit down to do this task. And it's like, well, maybe we should try doing it on Thursdays at 9 a.m. instead of 3 p.m. on Tuesdays. Like, so just thinking about your rhythm as you flow through your days, I think is also free, and it's super, super valuable when we think about productivity and like energy management.
I need to be so much better at that, because when I first started the podcast, I was like, I'm going to do them all on Mondays. And I'm like chronic. My sister and I call it Monday scaries. Like, she's basically a stay-at-home mom, and I work from home. And so I'm like, what are you doing today? She's like, the Monday scaries. We got to fight these together. Like, it's just not as much Sunday. It's a Monday thing. And so for me, I'm like, no calls on Monday. Like, that way, if I am experiencing that, I can have a slow morning and I can get into it when I'm ready. If I'm scheduled to do something, I have to be there. So exactly what you're saying, like scheduling that based off of what feels good in this time. When you were talking about the flexibility, I was thinking about this song. I love Casey Musgraves. She has a song. It's called Sway. Have you heard it?
Maybe. I love her. I'm not
okay, you need to listen to this song, because it was just what you're talking about. It's one of my favorite songs. It's called Sway. And the whole point of the song is she's saying, like, I hope that one day I can learn to sway like the trees. And when I listen to the song, I always think about that flexibility, because I'm so rigid. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, I hope that one day I can learn how to sway. I can learn how to bend and not have to follow everything to the actual T. And I think the whole point of flexibility, swaying, is being able to internally check in with yourself and understand what you need or what you want. Like you said, sometimes we don't have all those hours for me time. And then suddenly we hit this wall and we're like, okay, well, now it has to happen because it hasn't happened. And it's that ability to give yourself the permission to be like, okay, then that's what we're going to do right now. Obviously, there's constraints in there. There's family, children, there's meetings you're going to have to attend. But I think a lot of times we don't give ourselves that permission to bend. We don't give ourselves that permission when our bodies are screaming at us like, hey, we have to try something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, something that specifically like on that topic that's helped me is two things. Number one, acknowledging that you're in a really busy season or whatever that looks like, and maybe some things will need to be compromised. And just that alone helps, because then you're not living your days with this expectation, right? That you're going to have more time for something than you actually do, and then feeling like a failure. So just getting real with yourself and be like, hey, I'm in a busy season right now. I'm in growth mode. Maybe I don't have the team that I would like to have at this moment. And so I'm hustling a little bit harder than I would like to. But you know what? I've acknowledged that. I've accepted that. And I'm taking steps to resolve that. So I know this is not going to last forever. And proactively, I'm going to sprinkle in some fun me time, treats, self-care, whatever that looks like, 3 weeks out, 4 weeks out, so that I know it's coming and I have it on my calendar and it's a non-negotiable. It's going to happen. I'm going to stick with it. So I would say that's one thing. And then another thing that has also helped me, like really tactical tip, is throwing on my calendar buffer days. So like, I think I have the cadence just monthly right now, where one day every month, it's just says buffer day and the whole day is blocked out. People can't book calls with me. I do my best to not overlap it or be like, when I'm actually planning, and be like, oh, never mind, I don't need that anymore. This is more important. Even if it's just a half a day, but that helps because things pile up, right? Especially when you're really busy. And so being like, oh, sweet, I have this like whole free afternoon with like nothing on it. I can either get caught up, I can go get a pedicure, like whatever that looks like for me, whatever I feel like I need. So just doing like a recurring buffer block on your calendar. I do it once a month, and I do it for the whole, like one whole day every month, and it's just already on there. So try that out too, if you're feeling like overwhelmed and behind on stuff.
Yeah, no. And I love that, again, there's flexibility in that, because it's like, okay, well, I need to get caught up. Okay, maybe I'm going to do something else. That's such a good tip. I'm definitely going to incorporate that one. Well, Thank you so much. I feel like I learned so much, and I'm going to be downloading like every freebie that you ever talked about on here. I always love to end my podcast episodes with having our guests give some advice to someone who's in the in-between. And I think we've been talking about a very specific person in this episode, of a business owner who's just feeling stressed out, overwhelmed, and needing that extra boost. And so I would love, from your perspective, what advice would you give someone in the in-between?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can speak from experience on this one. So just unique to what I've gone through, I would say two things. Number one is kind of what we talked about before, getting really crystal clear on your why, because when it does feel really hard or you are putting in long hours and it's, maybe not feeling as fun or as calibrated as you would like it to be for certain seasons, just like being able to come back to that rooted why and be like, this is why I'm doing it, and being like, yeah, it might be a compromise today or this week or next week, but then I know it will recalibrate back to where I want it to be. That's helped me a ton. And then the second one, which maybe isn't like productivity focus, but it's just like my experience of being like in the messy middle where maybe you are putting in a lot of the work, but you're not quite seeing the fruits of your labor just yet, is moving quickly on decisions when they feel intuitively right. I have done this like since I started my business. I feel like this has just been like a value of me as an entrepreneur, is moving fast. And I don't mean that in an irresponsible way or a reckless way. I just mean if an opportunity or a connection, something feels like intuitively right and exciting for you, taking action quickly. So fast that you can't give your brain enough time to talk you out of it or let your doubts creep in, because I just have experienced that in a few instances where something felt really right, whether it was attending a conference or a speaking opportunity. It felt right, but it felt scary, and maybe I didn't throw my hat in the ring or reach out. Then the doubt did creep in and it didn't happen. When you are like, no, like, yes, I want to launch this offer. I want to speak on this stage. Like, I want to speak at that conference. Oh, they're doing speaker submissions. Like, just submit, like, just go as quickly as you can, because progress is made in the doing, not in the overthinking. And when we delay, we overthink. So obviously within reason, I'm not saying be reckless and say yes to every single thing. It's got to feel intuitively right and aligned based on your priorities in the season ahead. But I would encourage people when they're in that messy middle to just like keep going after opportunities and ideas and people and collaborations that feel really good, because it will pay off.
I love that advice. And I think you're totally right on the money, because it's like the longer that you sit on it, the more you'll scare yourself, the more you'll convince yourself, I don't know if I should do it, and just go for it. So yeah, we'll leave you with that. What do you need to just go for today?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun. I appreciate all your knowledge, and I'm going to leave this hopefully having an extremely productive day and implementing all your tips and tricks. Where can my audience connect with you? Where can they learn more, or potentially reach out for a discovery call or join your monthly program?
Yeah. Best place to connect with me is on Instagram. I'm there the most often, and my handle is just my name. So it's at Diana Lunzer. And I'm sure we'll throw that in the show notes. So that's the best place. The link in the bio has all the links that you could ever possibly need, to the freebies, to the Calm Calendar color palette, Notion templates, all the good things. Book a discovery call with me if you want to chat about a custom operating system build, and also a link if you want to learn more about joining the Productive CEO Club.
Awesome. And yes, we will put all of that into the show notes, including the freebies. So very exciting. Thank you so much for listening to the In Between podcast. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at In Between Combos. Thanks, Diana.
Thanks.